This podcast is funded by the Government of Canada's Future Skills program.
Hi, listeners. Before we begin, we just want to acknowledge that this episode was recorded prior to the outbreak of COVID-19 in Canada. As you well know, this virus has had a dramatic effect on Canadians' ability to go to work and access training and education, among so many other things. The conversations and opinions you will be hearing do not address COVID-related challenges specifically, but are meant to provide instructive insights into how we can better prepare for the future of work more broadly. We hope you enjoy this episode. Welcome to the Future Skills Centre podcast, presented by the Conference Board of Canada. I'm your host, Heather McIntosh. As a member of the Education and Skills team at the Conference Board of Canada, my colleagues and I are constantly looking ahead, gaining and sharing insights into the labour market of today and the future. Together with our partners, we inform and support local approaches to skills development and employment training to help Canadians transition in the changing economy. Speaking of partners, the Future Skills Centre is a consortium made up of the Conference Board of Canada, Blueprint, and Ryerson University. Together, we're building a centre that strives for research excellence and evidence generation. Like countries across the globe, Canada is facing wide-reaching demographic and technological changes that pose increasingly significant challenges to the world of work. In Season 1 of the Future Skills Centre podcast, presented by the Conference Board of Canada, we will explore some of the most crucial emerging challenges to the future of work. Each episode will unpack a unique challenge facing Canadians. We'll hear from varying perspectives, such as community members, decision makers, and thought leaders, to discuss solutions and paths forward. From the hybridization of vehicles to how we prepare food and construct buildings, technological advancements are transforming the way many skilled tradespeople in Canada are doing their jobs. As how we live changes, whether it's the car we drive or the homes we live in, the skills and training required by skilled tradespeople changes too. While this is exciting, it presents unique challenges for both people entering post-secondary education and people in the middle of their careers. The course that a student completes in their first year of training can become outdated by the end of their program, to say nothing of the skills of mid-career workers who did the bulk of their training years, if not decades prior. Think about a mechanic, for example. Someone who went through schools years ago would likely not have experience fixing a Tesla. Similarly, the young person going through school right now might not be exposed to training on computerized electrical vehicles because the trainer or journey person may not have the relevant knowledge or experience. This is an issue for the skilled trades in Canada in particular, where we're experiencing technological shifts in many industries and changes associated with the aging of the journey person population. This set of challenges leads to a number of increasingly pressing questions that we will explore in this episode on the shifting landscape of skilled trades in Canada, such as how can we ensure that instructors are up to date on knowledge of their quickly evolving professions? How can employers be convinced to offer upskilling training to their mid-career workers? And how can we ensure that there will be enough skilled tradespeople to fill the gaps created by Canada's shifting demographics? I spoke to Andrew Bieler, Senior Research Associate at the Conference Board of Canada, to pick his brain on the answers to these important questions. Andrew's got a bunch of experience researching experiential learning, apprenticeships, and the skilled trades. He's currently leading a research project on behalf of the Future Skills Centre on work-integrated learning and apprenticeships in Canada. I caught up with him to hear about his research project.
So the speed of technological disruption in the trades is just so fast, so difficult to keep up with at the moment in terms of the introduction of new technologies, from 3D printing in the manufacturing sector to electric and hybrid vehicles in the automotive trades, that there's increasingly concern around the upskilling that's required across our four main skilled trade sectors, and how to overcome some of the barriers to upskilling in the trades and better prepare trade schools to meet the demand of the future of the work in construction, manufacturing, motive power, and food service. So I'm looking at the impact of new technologies on skills requirements in the trades. What skills will carpenters, millwrights, cooks, and other red seal tradespeople across Canada need to be prepared for future workplaces and these new technologies that are changing everyday work?
What are the new technologies that are really influencing skilled trades in Canada?
So it really varies across industries, actually. So that's why our research is very sector specific. So we want to know what's unique in the automotive sector, what's unique in the construction sector, and so forth. For instance, automotive service techs. One thing that's underlined time and time again is the huge challenge of electric and hybrid vehicles. Vehicles are increasingly automated, involve work on computerized systems. The work of repairing a hybrid vehicle is very different, involves a very different skill set from working on your dad's 1970 Chevy.
How are training institutions helping to prepare apprentices for the jobs of tomorrow?
In all kinds of ways. So within apprenticeship in Canada, there's actually kind of three main types of educational institutions that are trying to working to confront these challenges. So there's the colleges and the polytechnics on the one hand, and they do most of the training. There's also the unions. Union halls play a huge role. And then there are private training institutions as well. So all three are doing different things to try to adapt to these challenges. So what we're looking at is, how can we kind of reduce the gaps between the introduction of these new technologies and the training offered by these institutions? Take the example of the electric or hybrid vehicle. If you're a mechanic wanting to upgrade your skills working in the automotive service tech trade, and you decide to do some upskilling, say a few months, to try to learn how to work on a hybrid vehicle, what kind of vehicle do you end up working on within that course at a college or a private institution? Is it the latest model that your customer is going to bring to you, or is it an outdated one? So we're interested in that type of question. We're interested in how can these institutions address the unique barriers and needs of apprentices and journey persons looking to upskill, right? So for journey persons, lifelong learning, continuous learning, you're putting in the hours, right? Typically, long hours, early mornings, et cetera, et cetera. So, what time are you willing to commit, or are you able to commit to upskill, to work with some of these new technologies? Is it a couple hours every couple of weeks? Is it maybe possible for your employer to either pay you or subsidize some of that training? What are the kinds of barriers that we need to address to enable tradespeople to upskill in these areas?
Andrew, how are employers responding to changes in their trade due to technology?
In a wide variety of ways. And some employers may be embracing new technologies such as, robotic welding, for instance, in the manufacturing sector, and embracing technologies that require certain upskilling within their workforce, and maybe even quite active in offering that upskilling. Others may be serving a clientele, a customer base, where a new technology in the sector is maybe less important. So I think really it really varies by industry, the different industries that we're looking at, by size of employer, by region, and we're really trying to listen to the needs of employers in this area, what would work best for them in terms of training institutions offering upskilling in the specific in-demand and emerging technologies in their industry, whether that's upskilling in hybrid vehicles or upskilling related to advanced manufacturing. We're really just trying to, at this stage, listen to the needs of employers in different industries and understand how we can best meet their needs, as well as help them offer that on-the-job training and mentoring that is so crucial to upskilling in these areas. At the end of the day, that mentoring between the journey person and the apprentice is so crucial. And it goes both ways as well. Like you take digital skills, for instance. Within that area, you may have, smaller auto body shops, say, where perhaps the journey person as a whole knows way more about the mechanics, but perhaps the apprentice has superior digital skills. So that learning can go both ways. Sometimes apprentices teach journey persons, some of these new emerging skills.
Andrew, what are the biggest challenges that employers face when trying to respond to the changes in their trade due to technology?
It really varies by industry and by company size, but I really can't underline enough some of the challenges that our small and medium-sized enterprises face with participation and training and apprenticeship and upskilling in the trades with these new technologies. So those smaller enterprises, those small construction contractors, electrical contractors, plumbing contractors, and so forth. Think about a shop of 10 to 20 people, for instance, or really anything under 100 people. With those types of businesses, they often just don't have the administrative or human resources capacity to upskill adequately and participate in training in the way that they would aspire to. So we need to offer supports that facilitate and encourage their participation in training. In Canada, it's still, only a very small fraction of employers participate in the apprenticeship system. So, if we're going to ask employers to help upskill their workforce, we need to make it easier for them to do so. There are numerous ways of facilitating this. In Ontario, they're really pushing group sponsorship. So organizations like Support Ontario Youth will offer supports for small and medium-sized enterprises to help reduce their admin burden and human resources burdens, and just make it easier for them to take on apprentices and mentor apprentices in the construction trades like electrical and plumbing, for instance. Some of those small and medium-sized enterprises are playing a key role, for instance, in green technologies and installing solar panels, solar heating, and the whole low-carbon transition. We often think that it's just the big guys that play a role in this, but there's lots of small employers that are very active in the low-carbon transition, and we need to think about how to help them upskill their workforce so they have those green skills, so they have those digital skills.
Andrew, you mentioned a lot of the challenges that employers are facing, but I'm wondering if you could explain some of the opportunities that new technologies are providing for upskilling apprentices.
There's really tremendous opportunities for online learning, online educational resources, hybrid learning, augmented and virtual reality. A variety of learning technologies can play a role, I think, in upskilling the skilled trades workforce. My question in this research project is really looking at what are the most appropriate technologies for different areas of upskilling. The speed of technological disruption in the construction, manufacturing, automotive, and food service sectors is not likely to let up anytime soon. We're seeing major technological disruptions due to automation, green technologies, and digital technologies across these sectors. Deans of trades in the college sector, industry leaders, HR leaders, apprentices, and tradespeople are all trying to figure out how do we stay current and how do we ensure the next generation of tradespeople in Canada, all those young people that we're working so hard to encourage to consider a skilled trades career, have the skills they need to work with the technologies they'll encounter when they exit trade school. And moreover, have the skills to continuously learn, stay up to date with those new technologies, with those new digital, green technologies as they come into the workplace, so they can stay current and meet the needs of their customers and ultimately thrive as entrepreneurs and innovators, helping to transition Canada's economy to a green, low-carbon future, to a really resilient and vibrant economy, and really to ensure that we know the types of transferable skills, the types of digital skills that are maybe transferable across trades in a sector, the types of green skills, whether those relate to working on hybrid vehicles or to installing solar panels, as well as the kind of foundational social and emotional skills like adaptability, resilience that you need to thrive in your career as a carpenter, an electrician, a millwright, or a welder in Canada's skilled trade sector. It's really a wide variety of transferable skills that tradespeople will likely need. We're trying to identify the most important ones for each sector, really listening to each industry at a time and using that information to inform training institutions and educational initiatives as they work so hard to bring the next generation of skilled tradespeople into Canada's economy.
Through my conversation with Andrew from the Conference Board of Canada, not only was it possible to get a glimpse into the research project he is doing on behalf of the Future Skills Centre, but I also got an understanding of how his research can help tackle the larger looming challenges posed by the future of work and skilled trades. The new opportunities that technological advancements bring to training and production, the displacement and demographic changes that will continue to change our economic landscape, and the digital, green, and human skills that will be increasingly in demand in the years to come. But what does this all look like in practice? To answer that question, I spoke to Jeff Ranson, the Greater Toronto Area's Regional Director for the Canada Green Building Council. Jeff also currently serves as the Executive Director of the Toronto 2030 District, acts as a Manager of Education for Sustainable Buildings Canada, and runs a private consulting practice focused on capacity building and strategic planning for sustainable development, urban climate change mitigation, and resilience. In his consulting work, Jeff co-authored national and state roadmaps for low-carbon housing in Peru, Costa Rica, and Mexico, and aided in the development of international zero-energy and near-zero-energy pilot projects through the Asia-Pacific Partnership for Clean Development and Climate. I spoke to him specifically about how the apprenticeship system in Canada contributes to the construction not only of zero-carbon buildings, but a sustainable future as a whole. In our conversation, Jeff shared with me how apprenticeships and skilled tradespeople can be responsive now to better prepare us to be future ready, especially in the context of green skills in the trades.
My name is Jeff Ranson. I'm the GTA Regional Director for the Canada Green Building Council. And our organization is a national nonprofit focused on advancing green building, high-performance building across the country. One of the key areas that we've been focused on and that my team's been leading is particularly looking at the move towards zero-carbon buildings as a way to support Canada's greenhouse gas mitigation goals. It represents a significant increase in building performance from how we currently build, and particularly when we look at the existing building stock, it represents a huge increase in the number of projects. And so it's imperative that if we're going to hit these tight timelines, these sort of regulated timelines over the next 30 years towards 2050, that we have a workforce that's capable of delivering the projects with the technical performance that's required and the volume of projects that's going to be required in terms of improving these buildings. And that's really where the workforce piece comes in. And so we've very much been focused on both the skill gap, what's different about high-performance buildings and what the industry needs to know to deliver them, and what does that workforce look like in terms of capacity, and what can we do to increase that.
Jeff, in the coming years, what are the biggest challenges to the sector that you work in?
I think in Canada, one of the biggest challenges we're going to have is how we address the aging population, and that, we do have a major sector of the workforce who's really going to be, leaving via retirement, and that we've got to fill that in, and we've got to fill it in with a certain degree of capability. You're losing senior experienced people and you're going to be bringing in young people who need to learn. They need to get up to speed quickly, and we need a lot more of them than we currently have. So how are we going to fill that role, and how are we going to do it in a way that works for obviously the people who are moving into these roles, where we're also reconciling some of the other challenges we have around affordability and the cost of living, particularly in places like the GTA in Toronto. People getting into some of these industries, you really can't make it work on minimum wage. And so we've really got to figure out how to provide good jobs, livable jobs, that also sustains the industry and which is such a major part of our economy here. I think if you look at the construction sector, just on the construction and trade side, we employ about 500,000 people. It's bigger than every other productive sector of the Ontario economy, bigger than agriculture, bigger than any other manufacturing sector. So it's about 500,000 jobs, and that doesn't include all of the professional services, architects, engineers, realtors, property managers who are engaged in this. So it's a huge piece, and we know there's a lot of construction happening in our markets. And that represents a huge investment. A huge amount of our GDP is happening in the construction space. So we're kind of wrestling with these two pieces where we want to keep this construction boom happening for the sake of the economy, but we also have to dial in affordability. And we've got to provide a workforce who can do the work at the volume and afford to live in these cities and regions. And that's a big challenge about how do we balance all of those different factors. You need integrated solutions and you need teams who work together. So the architects and engineers and contractors and trades and property managers should all be at the table and understand different roles and what different people are trying to accomplish and designing an integrated solution that is optimal for everybody. And that's very different from sort of the linear process that we typically work with, where maybe an architect designs a building, hands it to a mechanical engineer and says, make this work, who hands it to a contractor and says, get this built, who then turns that around to trades. And so it's not always the most well-informed project. There's a lot of input at the end of the process that would be much more valuable at the start of the process while it still just lines on paper. So those soft skills, how do you work together? How do you collaborate? How do you sort of restructure project teams? Those are really important things as well to focus on. And then maybe the last one, and this is maybe a little more out of the box, is thinking, if we're trying to attract people into the workforce, that means largely looking at populations who are looking for good quality work, maybe who are underemployed. And we know a lot of those are young. We know a lot of those are women. We know a lot of those are racialized groups. And so another important thing is really looking at evolving the culture of the industry and the workplace to ensure that you're attracting and open to attracting as many different people as possible. And that's not always the case. It's a fairly traditional industry. And so there's some work I think that's needed to look at the work environments and are those conducive to the widest possible pool of talent. And it's really, I don't have answers for that, but it's an interesting conversation to look at some of these groups and think about how we could be more accommodating to them, because we really do need, we all need each other. People need good jobs, but we need workers. We need people who can do the work, and we need lots of them.
Jeff was able to really bring to light the ways in which industrial shifts are putting new demands on skilled tradespeople and the institutions that train them. His focus on the need for collaboration across the different players involved really struck a chord and got me wondering, what is being done, or what can be done by the post-secondary institutions that are administering training for skilled trades? I spoke with Jim Szautner, Dean of the School of Manufacturing and Automation and the School of Transportation at the Southern Alberta Institute of Technology, often referred to in its acronym form as SAIT, to discuss just this. We spoke about his transition from the trades to higher education and the new initiatives being introduced at SAIT to break the mold of traditional trades learning. With so many different changes happening in terms of apprenticeship and the skills needed in skilled trades today, I'm curious to know about what you have innovated or what you're doing to help train students to prepare for this new future of work.
The whole conversation around skills tends to focus on single skill sets, or, what do I need to learn to be successful in the future? So people will come up with things like, you need to learn how to code, you need to have digital skills, you need to have essential skills, and we put a lot of labels on these things. But at the end of the day, what skill you need to learn to be successful in the future is you need to master the skill set of learning. We will never stop learning throughout our career or throughout our lifetime. So focusing on that, on knowing how to learn, how you're best able to learn, will allow you to pivot and be successful moving forward. And as the demands of work change, you'll be able to meet those demands because you're confident and you're competent enough to learn that new skill set.
So I love how you've talked about this sort of the skill you need is to know how to learn and this sort of philosophy of learning. I'm wondering if you can elaborate, Jim, a little bit more on some of the things that SAIT or you have implemented in terms of, for example, cool new technologies or initiatives to help train apprentices or skilled tradespersons for the future.
Yeah, so back in 2016, when we first brought in the mobile crane operator program, is we wanted to challenge some of the assumptions of the way crane operators were currently being trained, and we wanted to see if there was technology solutions out there that we could utilize to help augment our crane training. So we researched a number of different technologies that we could use, and we landed on the crane simulators, and they're quite elaborate simulators. So they got about 4 50-inch screens that the students sit in front of, and it creates a real high fidelity environment where it feels like you're really sitting in a crane, and it helps simulate that real world environment very closely. And then what it allows us to do is put the student in a safe situation where they can get comfortable with the controls, develop some of that fine motor skill that you need to operate a crane efficiently and safely. And then it also allows us to put in challenges into the student that we wouldn't be able to challenge them within our regular yard. So whether that be severe weather conditions, high wind conditions, or just the simulations themselves where we wouldn't have all of the different variety that we can put the students in front of, whether that's, operating a crane off of a rail car or in a construction environment where they're erecting steel, or a tower crane where they're lowering down 40 stories to pick up a load to drop off on a different part of the tower. So it really creates this additional flexibility that we have with the learners. And then what we find is when we introduce them to the crane simulation first, especially with our more junior level of apprentices who maybe haven't been around a mobile crane as much as a senior level apprentice, is that when they do get to the real piece of equipment, the familiarity with that piece of equipment is much higher. They're much more comfortable around it. They're not intimidated by it, and they're not afraid to ask certain questions about setup and things like that they may have felt like they wouldn't have been comfortable asking in the past. And then with the more senior apprentices, what we see them doing is challenging themselves more, doing stuff that's on the simulator that they maybe haven't had exposure to on site. So what it just allows is for a much greater flexibility for our training environment.
I'd love to know your general thoughts on how the development of digital technologies and automation have affected the nature of apprenticeship, skilled trades, and work more broadly.
I think what we'll need to do there is start to define what the tradesperson of the future, but really it's of the present. What that skilled tradesperson needs to look like going forward. So we look at something like automotive service technician. Back when I was doing mechanics, it was all mechanical systems and carburetors and mechanical diesel engine injections, and you had to be very good at making adjustments to mechanical systems. Well, you fast forward to today. Now you're making all of those adjustments electronically. So these technicians need to now develop skills that are utilizing computers. And they have to be able to interpret large amounts of data that is coming at them from all the diagnostics on the vehicle, so that they're able to make intelligent decisions about what the vehicle is telling them, what the parameters are, and where the fault could be located. So it's really taking a transformational approach for the automotive technicians to be able to be much more comfortable with using the computers for diagnostics as opposed to mechanical tools. And then that also parlays into how they do their work as well. There's no longer, paper written or fold work orders. Everything is now done digitally. So students or apprentices need to develop typing skills and be able to communicate quite effectively in a digital means. Because at the end of the day, they don't get paid because they fixed the problem necessarily. They get paid because of the report that they were able to write that outlines and dictates how the problem was fixed. Because that's what the customer is most interested in.
I'm wondering if you can share Any final thoughts that you'd like to sort of sum up in terms of how you see education and training helping prepare people for the future of that type of work?
Especially from the skilled trades aspect, is how I see that best preparing people for the world of work of future is really embracing the apprenticeship model that the skilled trades has been built on. So the apprenticeship model is really that foundation, and it's that integration of work with learning. So when recognizing that folks, as they are developing within their career, it takes time. And it takes time to phase in and then to develop mastery over the skill sets that they need to be proficient in that area. And just because you completed an apprenticeship in one area once doesn't mean that you stop learning. So it's really taking that model, but then transitioning that model into the lifelong aspect of how folks can continually upgrade their skills as they develop throughout their career. Some of the skills that folks will be, needing to develop more is recognizing that we've been in the information age now for a number of years, and there's no way one person will be able to know all that there is to know around a certain area. So we need to be able to develop those greater collaboration skills so that we're utilizing the folks around us better and bringing in more diverse opinions, and recognizing that, just because someone's thought is different doesn't mean it's wrong. It just means it's different. And we have to have an open mindset to open up our own mind to see it from their point of view. Because chances are the answer or the solution that we're looking for is somewhere in the middle. So it's that ability to learn. That's the greenest skill of them all.
Despite fears about technology displacing workers in a variety of sectors, the skilled trades are here to stay. Yet it seems that skilled tradespeople will need to continue to learn new skills throughout their careers, and our training programs will need to account for the environmental and digital requirements for the working world of tomorrow. But if anything, Canada will need more people filling these roles than ever before. This piece is called Advancing Skilled Trades in Canada's Apprenticeship and Skilled Trades Ecosystem, and it's part of a series of outputs related to this Future Skills Centre research project on work-integrated learning and apprenticeships. You can access this report and many more to come, free of charge, at conferenceboard.ca/Future Skills Centre. One key finding of this report, as we mentioned earlier in this episode, is the need to upskill mid-career workers in the skilled trades. Although we spoke about that in today's episode, it would be worth digging into that issue a little bit more to better understand that huge untapped resource of Canada's economy. What do we need to do to ensure our training institutions, employers, and workers are collaborating and given the support that they need to make sure employee knowledge is up to date in the quickly changing economy? To address this question, the next episode of the Future Skills Centre podcast presented by the Conference Board of Canada will be focused on upskilling and reskilling mid-career workers. I will once again chat with researchers, policymakers, and practitioners in Canada and abroad to put our finger on the pulse of upskilling, to understand what we'll need to do to make sure workers at all levels of experience have the know-how they'll need to keep things up and running. Until then, if you're enjoying the podcast, why not share it with a friend or colleague who would enjoy it too? You can subscribe through your favorite podcast app. Thanks for listening, and let's keep working toward a better future for all Canadians. The Future Skills Centre podcast is presented by the Conference Board of Canada and hosted by me, Heather McIntosh. It is produced by Noah Snyderman and Kevin O'Mara. At the Conference Board of Canada, we master complexity through our trusted research and unparalleled connections, delivering unique insight into Canada's toughest problems so leaders and communities can build a stronger future. Learn more about us and our work at conferenceboard.ca. We are a proud consortium partner of the Future Skills Centre, which is a pan-Canadian initiative connecting ideas and innovations generated across Canada so that employees and employers can succeed in the labour market, and to ensure that local, regional, and national economies thrive. To learn more, visit fsc-ccf.ca.